lockdown is still an option. Kung umabot tayo sa punto that the healthcare system is really overwhelmed beyond its capacity to effectively address the COVID-19 cases. But at this point, we feel na meron pa tayong pwedeng magawa to mitigate the surge.
We force them into situations where they cannot follow those 4 rules, yung apat dapat. And so, our call is mainly to the LGUs.
You've been hearing from the Health Professionals Alliance Against COVID-19. Unlike last year, they are holding off on calling for a timeout despite the resurgence of COVID-19 cases the past weeks.
Instead, they came up with a number of recommendations to help arrest the spread of infections. This as a number of hospitals in NCR have already reached critical level in their COVID care. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
And I am Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Hospital occupancy rates have risen in the metro as COVID-19 cases continue to surge, but healthcare workers are not requesting a timeout, at least not for now.
But to prevent rising infections from overwhelming the healthcare system, medical professionals said the ball is now with the LGUs and the business sector. Greg Gregorio has the big story.
Despite the sharp uptick in COVID-19 cases, health workers say they are not asking for a timeout just yet.
Lockdown is still an option. Kung umabot tayo sa punto that the healthcare system is really overwhelmed. But at this point, we feel na meron pa tayong pwedeng magawa to mitigate the surge.
The Health Professionals Alliance Against COVID-19 recommends the following actions instead. For the business sector, a work-from-home arrangement, as well as staggered work hours to avoid congestion in mass transportation. Companies are also urged to improve ventilation and intensify implementation of health protocols. For local government units, aside from rethinking the implementation of curfew hours, HPAC recommends the implementation of more granular lockdowns. Barangay Health Emergency Response Team should also be beefed up, and coordinated contact tracing measures should be enhanced. HPAC also urges active transport, takeouts, and open spaces for leisure. HPAC plans to submit these recommendations to the President.
Let's stop blaming the people. They're doing everything they can to comply. Kaya lang, we force them into crowds, di ba? We force them into enclosed space.
The Health Department's Dr. Beverly Ko tells the chiefs the healthcare system may be overwhelmed if the surge in cases is not controlled.
The bigger the number of cases, kahit 2% lang yung severe or critical natin, it will amount to huge number of people who will occupy the beds. No?
But it's not just bed occupancy. Some health workers still get infected after receiving their COVID-19 jabs, including 3 asymptomatic nurses who, according to the Filipino Nurses United. The Philippine College of Physicians say some doctors also tested positive even after receiving the first jab. But infectious diseases specialist Dr. Ronjin Solante explains this is not linked to the vaccine.
Ang akala nila na ang bakuna ang nag-cause ng COVID. No, it's not. It seemed that infection that was already there prior to vaccination.
HPAC also clarified that transmission is still possible even when an individual has been vaccinated.
It prevents disease. It will only protect people from manifesting signs and symptoms of the disease. Pwede pa rin tayong mahawaan.
The Health Department said they will investigate the matter. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
To give us more insights on the current state of hospitals and private hospitals in the country with this recent spike in cases, we have Dr. Jose de Grano, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, joining us via StreamYard. Dr. de Grano, welcome to the Big Story.
Good morning. Good evening, Robbie.
Good evening.
And Gretchen.
Sir, I mean, it's really admirable. Our health workers seem to be putting up really a brave front right now, a really brave face. But people are getting confused at the same time because they're hearing critical levels, pero kaya pa. They're hearing, we're getting overwhelmed, but there are still options. What exactly is the picture on the ground as far as you can appreciate it, sir?
Well, actually, in the whole country, it's still manageable because the whole country, the occupancy is only around 40%. But in urban centers like the National Capital Region, it's more than 50% occupancy, and there are at least 20 facilities uh, which are critical already in terms of their occupancy. That means that it's more than 85% full, and another 23 facilities are in the high risk level, and that's 70 to 85% full. But there are still hospitals within the National Capital Region who can still accommodate patients with COVID.
Given that, Dr. De Grano, what are the indicators that you are particularly watching to which we will be sensitive as to whether or not to sound a stronger alarm?
Well, of course, the first one is the number of cases per day. Right now, it lowered down a bit from 5,400 to 4,400 plus. And then, of course, the positivity rate, which has gone up to 12.7%, from 4% to 5% in the middle of February. That means that a lot of people are getting positive or infected uh, in the past few weeks only. And if the trend continues, then I'm sure probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks, then the hospital beds will be again most of them will be in full capacity, just like in August of last year.
Okay. Dr. Jose De Grano, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, maraming salamat po. More hospitals in Metro Manila are entering critical levels in their bed capacity for COVID care. Tonight's big number, 20. Out of 159 hospitals in the metro, 20 facilities have already reached 85% bed occupancy, according to the latest tracker of the Health Department. Of the 20 hospitals under critical level, 4 are already at full occupancy. In the entire region, 3,995 of 7,775 beds are already occupied. That's 51% occupancy, still in the safe zone.
These are the other big stories tonight. After the imposition of a uniform lockdown, more Metro Manila youths will not be allowed to leave their homes. Those aged 18 years old and below should stay indoors for the next 2 weeks. It's official. Government has secured 30 million doses of Novavax vaccines. The shots are set to arrive in the second half of the year. And not only is it the new record holder for the longest bridge in the Philippines, the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway will also help usher in 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines. These big stories right after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Starting tomorrow, Metro Manila minors up to 18 years old will be prohibited from going outdoors for 2 weeks. On the first night of the uniform curfew alone, a number of minors had already been apprehended for staying out. Justin Punsalang with this story.
A group workout session? Not really. These are curfew violators in Manila forced to perform physical exercises.
Kaya dun sa mga violators, kung ayaw niyong matulog, bibigyan namin kayo ng kaukulang exercise para naman matugunan ang gusto niyo.
Metro Manila cities imposed a uniform curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. starting March 15. Manila City alone apprehended a total of 1,139 violators on the first night, the most in NCR, while Quezon City had 819 offenders. A number of violators are minors. In Santa Cruz, Manila, nearly 70 minors were caught. The youths were held at a covered court where social workers were waiting.
Na-found out natin na sila naman talaga o sa part ng magulang na may pagpapabaya, yun po, nandyan po yung ating mga katong sila.
Neglectful parents and guardians will be charged with the Anti-Child Endangerment Ordinance of the city. But starting Wednesday, minors aged 18 years and below will no longer be allowed to leave their homes. Metro Manila mayors agreed to widen movement restrictions on minors for 2 weeks in a bid to arrest the resurgence of COVID-19 cases in NCR. According to DILG Undersecretary Ipimako Densing, not only are minors susceptible to the virus, they are also potential carriers.
2 pediatric associations told them, including the Philippine Pediatric Association, since they are very strong, they have a strong immunity system, they could be asymptomatic carriers and could be spreading around the virus.
The widening of the age limit comes months after government decided to allow those aged 15 to 65 years old to go out in an effort to revive the ailing economy. For News 5, Justine Punsalang. We are One News.
The country has officially secured 30 million doses of the Novavax vaccines. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez has signed the country's supply agreement with the Serum Institute of India. The shots are expected to arrive by the third or fourth quarter. So far, 215,000 Filipinos have been vaccinated in more than 900 sites across the country. Out of the 1.1 million supply, 96% have been distributed.
So kung 4,500 po yung vaccination sites, you will be expecting to vaccinate 450,000 people a day, Mr. President. And because we are targeting 70 million people to be vaccinated to reach herd immunity, Mr. President, it will take about 5 to 6 months to complete the first dose of vaccinating 70 million Filipinos for the first dose.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is urging countries not to halt the use of AstraZeneca shots after more European countries suspended its use. They stressed that there is still no evidence showing that cases of blood clots were caused by the vaccine. The WHO also urges the Philippines to use up its AstraZeneca doses from the COVAX facility to avoid delays with the second tranche.
In a bid to prevent PDA or public displays of affection in San Juan, the city police take up a recently popular lockdown hobby, biking. How exactly do they enforce protocols on wheels? Mobile journalist Stanley Gajete gives us a front seat to that big story.
Weekends are usually a good time to go biking. But for these bikers in San Juan, it's another weekend of reminding people that the pandemic is far from over.
Kuya, face mask mo! Mga ate kuya! Distansya po kayo, distansya! Huwag po kayo magdikit-dikit!
Meet the bike patrol of the San Juan PNP. The city started its bike patrols during World Bike Day in June last year.
As you can see here, police officers are chasing people who are not wearing face masks properly and not practicing social distancing outside their houses.
Now the patrol has new orders. They now enforce the ban against public display of affection. Doing this on a weekend was not going to be easy.
SOP natin sa protocol natin, may social distancing pa tayo. Wala
mo ng holding hands?
Wala po, okay lang naman po. Saka maganda din po yun para din naman sa kapakanan ng lahat.
But not everyone is cooperative.
Kapag dalawa lang, yun nga siguro kailangan ng isipan.
But it's a serious business for the city. San Juan was ground zero for the COVID infection in Metro Manila. The first recorded infection here was in the popular Green Hills Mall. With the new variants hitting the national capital region, the numbers are far from reassuring.
Kaya po, medyo doble po yung pag-iikot po namin ngayon.
Just this weekend, police have apprehended 113 violators. The city ordinance penalizes violators with a steep fine. With the rising cases of COVID-19 infections, authorities might just stretch social restrictions. The Pinaglabanan Shrine, always a popular dating place in the city, is now practically empty. For now, that's just how the city prefers it to be.
While we have vaccines right now, it is still important that we practice minimum health protocols for us to fight together the mobility, the COVID-19 variants. Stanley Gahete, we are One News.
Time for our next plus look at some of the day's big stories. Amid confusion, the San Miguel Corporation says the Skyway 3 will remain open. The misunderstanding over the closure allegedly comes from the inaction of the Toll Regulatory Board on the issuance of toll operation permit. SMC President Ramon Ang said that he already coordinated with Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade, who committed to act on the firm's concerns. Palawan will remain intact after majority of residents voted to reject a proposal, breaking up their hometown into 3 separate provinces. Over 172,000 people voted against the move to split Palawan into Palawan del Norte, Palawan Oriental, and Palawan del Sur through a historic plebiscite. The Board of Canvassers issued a declaration after tallying votes from 22 municipalities. The Supreme Court has approved the proposal to require cops to wear body cameras when serving warrants. This comes amid mounting pressure to review the issuance and implementation of warrants that has led to deaths. But SC spokesperson Brian Hosaka said there is still no resolution yet from the court on the use of body cameras. Time for another quick break. When we return, let's have a glimpse at the new record holder as the longest bridge in the country. The structure will also play a significant role to mark the country's quincentennial commemoration. And the nominations are out, and it's turning out to be the most diverse Oscar year ever. Find out who the nominees are after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. The Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway Bridge is joining in on celebrations for the 500th anniversary of Christianity in the Philippines, with 8 crosses set to light up by the sky by April. Gerard de la Peña with a story.
Bridge of Tomorrow. This is how National Geographic Channel Asia touted the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway Bridge. At 8.5 kilometers long, this bridge has surpassed the 2-kilometer San Juanico Bridge, connecting Samar and Leyte as the longest bridge in the country.
It is envisioned not just as a landmark, but talagang an engineering marvel at saka an iconic structure.
Apart from it being a structural wonder, the CCLEX also has historical and religious significance, with the country celebrating 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines. It was in March 1521 when ships led by Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan docked in Cebu. There will be galleons arriving in the island this weekend to commemorate the day, which also marks the arrival of Christianity in the Philippines. This megastructure has 2 of those big pylons, and there are 4 crosses on each pylon, which are illuminated at night. These crosses are an allusion to Magellan's Cross and emphasizes Cebu's importance as one of the first few places in the Philippines where Christianity started. The 840-meter high crosses will be lit up on the evening of April 15 to mark the quincentennial anniversary of Christianity in the country. Cebu Archbishop Jose Palma will lead the blessing of the crosses. The CCLEX Bridge is expected to be finished by the end of the year and will be open for public use within the first quarter of 2022. It's expected to cater to 50,000 motorists a day, decongesting the old Marcelo Fernan and Mactan-Mandaue bridges. The new structure is also seen to aid the development of Cordova, a third-class municipality, as well as Cebu's economy with 80% of shipping companies in the Philippines based in the province. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, the Supreme Court has junk petitions challenging the government's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. The SC Public Information Office said that the court rendered a unanimous decision dismissing the petition for being moot and academic. The country's official withdrawal from the ICC took effect in March 2019. Business World reports the government's new water concession contract with Ayala-led Manila Water will be finalized this week. Once this is finalized, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara said the talks with Maynilad will commence. President Duterte ordered a review of the concession agreements over alleged onerous provisions. And from News 5, Quezon Province Councilor Arky Yuldes filed a graft and corruption case against DPWH Regional Director Ronel Tan. A video shows Tan throwing bundles of cash to his guests during a Christmas party, amounting to around 2 million pesos. The Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission is now looking into the matter.
And here are other big stories from around the world. The Vatican says the Roman Catholic Church cannot bless same-sex unions as approved by Pope Francis himself. This comes in response to practices in some countries like the US and Germany where same-sex unions are recognized. In a documentary last year, Pope Francis expressed support for same-sex civil unions, but the Vatican said the Pope was taken out of context. And the UN said at least 138 peaceful protesters have been killed in Myanmar since the military coup started in early February. 38 protesters that lost their lives were on Sunday alone. The UN has condemned the bloodshed and is calling on the international community to come together in solidarity with the people of Myanmar. Myanmar state media said at least 5 areas in Yangon have been placed under martial law.
For the big stories in sports, Ivorian basketball star Ange Kwame and Spanish footballer Bienvenido Marañon are now just one signature away from being naturalized Philippine athletes. The Senate on Monday passed on third and final reading the bill granting citizenship to the two. With the measure approved in both houses, this sends the bill to President Duterte's table for signing. Kwame, who has previously played for the Ateneo Blue Eagles, is expected to join Gilas Pilipinas in the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers. Marañon has expressed intent to become part of the Filipinascos. 15-year-old tennis prodigy Alex Iala is set to play wild card at the Miami Open. The Rafa Nadal Academy made the announcement that Alex will get to play with top-ranked players in the tournament in Florida next week. Alex is currently number 3 in the ITF Juniors, posting a dominating performance in the Australian Open girls doubles and the French Open semi-finals.
This year's Oscars in one word, diversity. A record 76 nominations went to women. For the first time in its 93-year male-dominated history, 2 women will compete in the 5-person Best Director race. Chloe Zhao for the Korean drama Nomadland, and Emerald Fennell for the hashtag MeToo revenge tale Promising Young Woman. 9 of the 20 acting nods went to non-whites, including first for Muslim Riz Ahmed in Sound of Metal, and South Korean Yo Jung-hyun in Minari. Chadwick Boseman gets a posthumous nomination, while Viola Davis lands her 4th, the most for a black actress ever. The 1930s Hollywood drama Mank led the diverse lineup with 10 nods, including Best Picture. The Oscars will be held on April 25. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
500 years.
Yung Cebu-Cordova, napakaganda nung no?
Parang masarap mag-road trip doon, ano? Pwede, during the pandemic. Pero hindi pa siya tapos. Pag natapos na.
But everybody's getting into the mood of the quincentennial of the Philippines. Pati yung ethnic blouse mo.
And speaking of Filipino pride, we're very, very proud of Alex Iala getting into the Miami Open. I think Nadal is also there, Djokovic, Naomi Osaka, all the tops in the tennis world. And we hope that she will do well. Definitely very proud of you. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho, and we are One News. Have a good evening.